Self-Love is the New Sexy, the podcast devoted to helping you overcome life's most painful and stubborn challenges so you can feel great, have more energy, and live stress-free every day. To reach your full potential, simply work with the powerful spiritual principles that are readily accessible to everyone. It's easier than you think, and on today's show, W. Mark Watts is going to show you how starting with self-love is the key to joyously and harmoniously making that happen.
Hey everybody, it's W. Mark Watts. I want to say hello, welcome, and thank you for hanging out with me for another episode of Self-Love is the New Sexy. And in today's episode, I want to talk about something that's super important to this whole idea, concept of self-love and to the importance of your overall happiness. And that is knowing your value. Knowing your value. Now, this is important on a couple different levels in everyday life. Number one, monetarily. Monetarily, it's important that you know your value because when you go to interview for that job or when you start a business and you have services, then you need to know what you deserve to earn from your work. Either way, whether you're working for a company or whether you're offering services in a business of your own. And then number two, you also need to keep your eye on what services and what particular jobs or items should relatively cost, what are their value, so that you know that you're getting an equitable deal when you purchase them. So you need to know value from both perspectives, what your time is worth, what you're worth, but not only that, what are the things that you're purchasing, that you're involved in, that you're connecting with, what is their value as well, so that you make sure that when you're exchanging time or exchanging your money, that you're getting the proper value that you need. So big point or a big reason why this topic came up for me today was when I started my businesses. You know, oftentimes if you don't come from an entrepreneurial family background or you're not really familiar with it, I had an issue with what I wanted to charge. First of all, charging for my services. And then what should I charge? Because if you're used to exchanging your time for money, you know, you're used to working a job, it's oftentimes difficult when you make the transition or as you're making the transition to know just what your services are worth and what you should charge, which ultimately boil down to, you knowing the value of what you give. And the value of what you give is oftentimes very different than, the dollar value that you receive for it. So there is a level of complication there and a level of confusion. And it took me a while to learn that. And in some instances, I'm still learning that. But that's why I have mentors to help teach me and guide me, and that I can model so that I can ultimately do a better job or the best job that I can in the moment of knowing my value so that I can move forward in the work that I do each and every day. So if you don't know your value, then it's very easy to get shortchanged. It's very easy to come up short. And it's very easy to accept jobs that will pay you less than what you're worth, than what you really contribute. And so you have to be mindful and very careful. Because if this whole idea of value, your own individual value is that big, is that we oftentimes don't think of ourselves as being very valuable, but we are extremely valuable, and our time is extremely valuable if we are applying ourselves. So if we are doing what we're supposed to do, if we're using our gifts and our talents to the best ability, if we're focused, if we do things in a timely manner. So all those things that create value, if you're doing those things, then you must allow the universe to pay you, to return the gifts to you that are commensurate with the value that you're offering, extending each and every day. So knowing your value is very important. And when you don't know your value, it's very easy to become upset, to become disenchanted, to become unhappy in situations. And it's not anyone else's fault. It's always our job to know our value and to demand our value, because when we know and demand, and of course we serve in a manner that's, consistent with what we deem our value to be, then we will get it. We have to trust and believe that. Now, when we aren't getting that, then we get angry at other people. And it's not another person's job to know your value or to offer you what you deem your value is. It's your job to know that value, to ask for that value, and to accept that only that value. Many times, even when I first started out, I remember there would be times when people weren't willing to pay what I was asking, and probably I didn't do a good enough job of helping them understand my value. I wasn't fully feeling the value that I thought I deserved, so there was confusion on my part, and therefore there's confusion on the other person's part. And so what ended up happening was I would lessen my value to meet their standards or to meet what they were willing to pay. And then that becomes problematic, because when you do that, that person automatically devalues you, which means they're going to deal with you in a less than valuable environment. They're going to devalue that whole experience, which means they're not going to get as much out of it as they should. You're not getting out of it what you should. So that whole experience is not what it could be, simply because I didn't know my value and I didn't do a good job of explaining it and demanding it. And when you do that, you end up with a less than ideal situation. And what I found almost every time in every situation, when I did not articulate my value correctly, when I didn't demand and allow them to exchange what I deemed my value was, that experience ended up not being a good or a positive experience. Of course, it was a learning experience for me. And then every time that I did offer and demand what I felt was the correct value for my services, my time, those experiences ended up being very good experiences. So I had to really get comfortable with, hey, here's my value. Here's how I exchange that with you. Now, you have the opportunity to exchange with me in order to receive the value that I'm offering. If we can't agree there, then we may not need to do this. It's best that we not do this. It's best that you work with someone else, and then I work with someone else. And every time, I can tell you, every time that I've done that, it's worked out in my favor. Every single time. Even though there are times when you think, oh, I really want that sale, or I really want to work with that person because they're nice, they're this, that, and the other. It just doesn't work out, because the relationship starts out in a devaluing environment. So they have to understand your value. You have to understand it. You have to articulate it. They have to be willing to accept it. There has to be a mutual agreement on the shared value. If not, then there is an opportunity there for things to go downhill. So I want to close on this, is understand your value. And if you don't know what your value is, what I started doing was, in the very beginning, was I would look at people who are doing the same types of things that I do or I aspire to do, find out what they thought their value was, what types of products and services they were offering, and how much time were they spending doing those services, performing those services. And then I would model what, I would then look at what I was offering, make those things comparable when possible to what they were offering, and then I would create a value based on those items. And then the last thing about this whole value thing is, when you're offering products and services, you want to look at what accomplishment, what achievements, how are you really helping them? What is the value that that person or person's group, what can they potentially get from working with you or using your products? What is the value of the end result? Because we're in a result-oriented environment. And so don't always look at what I'm giving you. Hey, I'm giving you hours of one-on-one coaching. I'm giving you a product or a system that you can take home. I'm giving you a 10-hour training program. It's more than that. It's what is the value of what you receive? What are they receiving as a result of working with you, as a result of using your product? That is a lot more valuable than that thing, that hour itself. So we have to not only look at it from the level of here's what I'm offering you, here's what we agreed to do, but then also look at what can you achieve? What will you gain? What's the long-term effects of what you will receive by buying my product or working with me? And when you look at it from that perspective, that is a huge value. And so that's also the thing that you have to keep in mind when you're working a job is the work that you are performing. What's the long-term, what's the bigger picture value? When you are positively and directly affecting a longer term value proposition for the company, then you are more valuable for the company. So the more you can contribute not only to the daily, but to the bigger picture, the overall production, the overall economic status of the company, that means that you're more valuable to that company. And therefore, you should be compensated accordingly. So I'm going to end on this. Start to think about your value. And if you don't have any idea, look at people who are doing similar things that you're doing, model what they consider to be their value, do the research, then come up with your value, and then start to demand that value. Start to prove if you're not already doing it. If you're already doing it, highlight that value to the people who are responsible for paying you so that they can recognize it, confirm it, and then pay you accordingly. So what's your value? Find out what your value is and be firm and demand that from the universe. And before you know it, you will get that and more. All right, folks, been great hanging out with you. Hit me up on social media, wherever you find me. It's a conversation. So let me know what what steps you're taking toward receiving the value, your own personal value. And what are you willing to offer for that? How is that working out for you? All right. I'll talk with you all again soon. Be good now. Bye.
You've been listening to Self-Love is the New Sexy with W. Mark Watts. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to tell a friend. Also, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to our show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, or wherever you listen to podcasts.